introduce a poet who has now become tremendously known in the world because she was one of the strong poets of the Nazi regime. She was persecuted everywhere she lived in Germany. She had to hide in her own house, in different family houses. And then finally, in 1940, she decided that she had to emigrate, and she emigrated to Sweden, where she wrote almost all of her poetry that was thereafter published and probably also translated into 60 different languages. What's so interesting about her is the creation of a different kind of attitude toward poetry. We as readers are generally accustomed to ask the question, what does the poem mean? And to ask that question for Neli Saks, S-A-C-H-S, poetry would not get very far, because the question, what does a poem mean, is not applicable to her, because what she does in her poetry is to create an atmosphere that gives me, the reader, of the horror and the pain that she experienced while she was a Jewish person in Germany. And she actually did not want to ever go back to Germany, which I believe is the case, but she did go to Switzerland once. And while she was in Switzerland, all of a sudden she heard somebody pronouncing German words. And the moment when she heard these German words, she fainted. That was so horrible for her, that reminded her of all the disasters, the pain, and the injustices she had received in her earlier life in Germany. So what does this do for her poetry? We can't ask the question each time we read a poem, what does it mean? Interestingly enough also, that very many of her poems have no title. And many of her poems are also very short. So what does that indicate? We need to look at each poem that it creates its own images, its own sound, that are reflecting the horror and the pain and the neglect that she experienced in Germany. How do we then, as a poet, recreate the atmosphere that has guided her life, has fashioned her life, and also has made her extremely well known in the realm of German poetry and international poetry? How do we go about rediscovering the power of her poems? First of all, the titles of the collection of her poems, in many cases, have death in it, have death fugue, similarities that was created by Paul Celan, and he created to himself and to us a sense of what this dissonant sound had to be to get the attention, the atmosphere, the images, and also the music of that particular poetry that reflects the disaster of the Jewish community in Germany, Auschwitz, and Holocaust. Just to give us an idea of how this worked, we look at Todesfuge, the Death Fugue by Paul Celan. Schwarze Milch der Frühe, wir trinken sie abends. Wir trinken sie mittags und morgens, wir trinken sie nachts. Wir trinken und trinken. Wir schaufeln ein Grab. In den Lüften, da liegt man nicht eng. Fugue of Death, which has become probably the most well-known poet and poem of the Holocaust. Just a few lines now. In English, black milk of daybreak, we drink at nightfall, we drink it at noon, in the morning we drink it at night, we drink it, we drink it. We are digging a grave. In the sky, it is ample to lie there. So what we are finding out, the same way that we had in music, that all of a sudden a different sound is being created by the composers, whether it's Charles Ives, Schoenberg, and the others thereafter, we now find that there is a predominance of creating, inventing, and repeating especially words that have the darkness of their existence. And the darkness of their existence is simply starting with death, starting with pain, starting furthermore, what is left there for us to do. In one of the cases in Saks's poem, I touch my lips, and what do I find? Silence, silence, silence. The idea of silence also in modern poetry has become predominant. Even if we look at Proust, his great novel is built on silence. What is it? We're trying to find the silence that might give us a way out of the disasters, of the pain, of the deaths we have experienced. And Saks is at the forefront of that. She knew how to really give new life to her atmosphere of poetic vision that is based on the poems that she created. First of all, a lot of the poems have no titles. How can you give a title to a poem that cannot be expressing the meaning that you want it to have? So all you can do is present yourself and have an ear for the sounds of the words, and then especially also the associations of the words. And these associations in most cases are very dark, are very, very dark,